Hello there. Have you ever wondered what exactly um, does it mean when Jesus said that he was giving us all the what exactly the Great Commission is all about? What is all that of going to places, going to nations, going to specific people, going to specific culture? In today's broadcast, we will learn from the Master himself and how he used geography, physical space, as a way of engaging as he encountered with people, even though of the same land, of different dispensation, different understanding, and even different, home settings. My name is Kasisi Kĩriakũ, and I welcome to a moment with Kasisi as we continue seeking wisdom that we may gain understanding. And it is always my pleasure every time and every broadcast to first read my own translation in English and then in Kikuyu. I will do the same. And today I just wanted to highlight and mention again that the text that I usually use, this is when I usually talk about the Greek text, this is what I'm talking about. I usually read from that and make my own translation in English and in Kikuyu. And in today's broadcast, we are looking at John chapter 3, verse 22 to 24. Very short verses. And here is my translation. 22. After this, Jesus and his disciples came or went into the Judean land and spent time there with them and baptized. Thutha ũcio Yesu na arutwo ake magĩthiĩ itũũra rĩa Yudea na agĩikaranga kũu nao na akĩbatithania. 23. John, the baptizing one, was in Ainon near Salem because there was much water or plenty water, and they were coming and were baptized. Yohana Muvatithania are hakuhe na Ainon, are Ainon hakuhe na Salim, tondũ kwarĩ maĩ maingĩ kũu, na nĩmokaga na makabatithio. And the last one, for John had not been thrown into prison, tondũ Yohana ndaikĩtio kĩhingĩro-inĩ. I had some difficulty, trying to think of a proper Kikuyu word for jail, because of course the current word that is used, jera, is definitely a borrowed word from Swahili. So I thought Kehigiro might be a better translation, but it's my attempt. So a couple of things in these three verses, but I want to concentrate on one. We can talk about the question whether Jesus baptized, because that's what verse number 22 talks about, but I'm not going to go there. Maybe later we can encounter that. Today I want us to talk about geography and the significance of geography, the physical space in our ministry and in our calling to the work of Jesus Christ. We have been dealing with the conversation between Nicodemus and Jesus. And John, the writer, gives us a hint as he is transitioning from a specific narrative to another one. And in this case, the transition itself are two words. That is meta tuta or tota in this case. After this. So we know he's talking about specific period of time, and it is after what? After the conversation with Nicodemus. And we are told he goes to this place, which is called the Judean land. Well, in general, the land of Judea speaks of the whole land of Israel. But in this specific moment, it gives a reference of a specific geography, a geographical space, and this is southern Palestine. Of course, Jerusalem itself was in this locale, and it separates out or it distinguishes southern Palestine from places like Galilee, Idumea, or what's called the Idumea, and other places of interest in the book of John. So he goes to this place, and we are even told the location, even though people have not been able to place specifically where Ainon is or was and Salim. But briefly, I'll show you a map. Shortly, I'll show you a map as we try to wrestle with this. And it is here that he encounters for, say, a second time, because generally the first time he encountered John for a second time, John the baptizing one. I don't know why they called him the Baptist. You know, when you talk about the Baptist, you tend to think of the of the denomination that is called the Baptist. But in Greek, it's actually the baptizing one. So I don't know whether the Baptist is a correct translation. But anyhow, I hope you get the point. So for a second time, he goes to this geographical space where he encounters John. And we are told that John has chosen this space for baptizing because there's a lot of water. That gives us a hint of the geography. There's a lot of water, and we'll talk about why I think the geographical space is important. But we also told that he spent a considerable time. The word here, again, is a diatriben, which comes from the word diatribe or diatribe, which also can be used for the word diatribe that we use in English. But the idea is that he spent a considerable time. So it was not just a passing on. So he met Nicodemus in Jerusalem. They have a conversation because he was down in Jerusalem for the Passover meeting or for the Passover season. And now it's time for him to move to another space. And he chooses to go to, according to John, to go to where John the Baptist was, or the John the baptizing one, and spend a lot of considerable time. What is my point today? My point is about geography. And when we are called and when given the mandate of the Great Commission, what that exactly means. Because sometimes we do tend to confuse our calling with the Great Commission with the going to our very own. You know, if you are Kikuyu, for example, I'm choosing to use Kikuyu as a second, part of my translation. But if you are Kikuyu, we tend to assume that our calling is to our people, to our families. And if you are Catholic, you think that you're being called to go and reach out to other Catholics like you, or to spaces that are familiar with you. But we find a very interesting way that Jesus engaged with geography. He would sometimes go to Jerusalem, other times go to Galilee, other times you find him in Capernaum, which I will reference shortly, and those other spaces. Why are these locations important to Jesus? Well, Jerusalem, we know, was the city, was the capital of Judean country, the general Judean. And it is in Jerusalem also that we had the temple. And the religious leaders lived in and worked in Jerusalem. So it was a space that was specifically politically, in politics, it was a very important space. Religiously, this was the center of power. And this is where we had people like the Pharisees, the leaders, majority of the leadership within the Pharisees. People who had a specific way of looking at Judaism and religion, people who had power around them, and people who would question anybody who threatened that space. So you don't engage with political leaders, we don't engage with church leadership or with those who are in power the same way you engage with those that are in the lower cadre of society. So the engagement even that we saw between, Nicodemus is one of the powerful men at the time. So that engagement is an engagement with a very powerful person, and Jesus would reach out even to the powerful. In sometimes there would be altercation, there would be, a dislike because people who are in power don't want other people to come in and take over. But then we are told that he moves to Salim, near Salim, which Ainon, this is where John is baptizing. Geographically, why is this important? If you have been following my teaching and my lessons as we go through the book of John, I did talk about the Qumran society. This was a group of people who were Jewish in the understanding of the Torah and in the understanding of the calling of God, but they thought the city, Jerusalem, was kind of defiling their thinking, their ministry. It was kind of, um, uh, it wasn't a good place for them, and therefore they decided to pull out and live as a community of believers who lived in caves up at the top of the Dead Sea, and I'll show you a map shortly. And then there's Galilee, where he will eventually go to, and this was his hometown. So these three spaces are very important in Jesus's ministry. But now, when we come to the specific area that we are talking about, let me pull up a map here for you, and I hope that you're still with me and that you follow what I'm doing here. I have this map, and this is the map of ancient Israel at the time of Jesus, and I have three spaces circled. One is circled green, the other one is circled red with an arrow, and another one is circled purple. Now, the purple one here that you see here, that is the general area where Jerusalem is. And there are some scholars who speculate that the Salem and Ainon was where now the red circle is, and I'm pointing in blue. So this is where Jesus find John. And then up north a little bit, that is generally the general area of Galilee, where individuals, which was his hometown. So Jerusalem down here, a location of power, a space that is that speaks of the power to be of the day, both religious and politically, and very wealthy people and scribes, and the temple and all the good things that come with the religion, power, and all those things. And then up here, you have a community of believers who have separated themselves. And one of the key practices, ritual practices, religious practices of this community was baptism. And this is why if you have followed, theologians, they will speak of baptism, that baptism did not come with Jesus because it was already being practiced by the group of people who lived here, who were the Qumran community, and basically a group of people called the Essene. And John the Baptist is thought to have been one of the Essene, those who separated themselves, those who felt that, they needed to purify, to live a good life, to live a holy life. And in the process, good things did come out of this community, because today we would not have the scriptures as we know it warranted for this group that lived here. So this is a group that is separate from the group that lives here. And Jesus is engaging, he goes up and he is engaging them, and he stays there for a considerable time. And then eventually he goes up north, and this is where his family is. This is where the mother is. This is where the brothers are living. This is where, this is what he calls home. But Not just that, it is also close by, there is the synagogue, one of the ancient known synagogues in Capernaum. And if I have time, maybe later down the line, we can talk about the place of synagogues in the establishment of Christianity from Judaism. But this was a very important space also for that. So religiously, culturally, in family setup, different from this location down here, where we have the Qumran society, people separated, and different from this community down here in the purple section. Why is this important in our discussion? It is important in a couple of ways. That when you're thinking about ministry, you think about how Jesus did his ministry. He paid attention to one culture. What was the culture of the space? How are people behaving? How are they relating with one another? How, what is it that was so important and dear to them? What were their customs? What are the customs of this specific place? In Jerusalem, the custom is all about power, religious power and all that. In Qumran society, the custom there is to be more, more inclined to the introspection of the spirit, going deeper into matters of spirit, seeking God in your heart and separating yourself from the society. And up north, of course, the family and the study of the Torah in the synagogue. And also, he would wrestle with what people valued. When Nicodemus came to him at night, there were specific things that he valued. And he saw in Jesus somebody who could speak to some of the things that he valued deeply. And definitely, Jesus also engaged religious thoughts of the moment. What does this tell us about the Great Commission? That our work is, we can simplify it by just demanding that people need to come to Jesus. And that is our calling. But if you do not recognize people's customs, people's culture, people's spaces and values, and people's religious thought that occupy them in day to day, you will be bound to fail. You will be bound to fail in reaching out the community. And this is why it is important in our calling to not just think about the local space that we live in, but to also think of the bigger spaces that we don't occupy, where other people live. And when we think of these spaces, we have to prepare ourselves. We have to think deeply on how to engage them. Back in the days when you were growing up, we were taught to condemn, that anytime you meet with somebody who is a smoker, the starting point is condemning the smoking part, or condemning alcoholic part, or condemning the prostitution part. But that is their way of life. That is what they know. So when you start by condemning, what happens is that people either close up or they get defensive. If you go to a Muslim today and you tell him or her that his religion is wrong and yours is right, definitely you're not going anywhere in terms of convicting an individual to accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. We need to learn how to engage with cultures. We need to learn how to engage with customs of people. We need to how to engage with people's religious thoughts, so that when we are speaking, we speak from a space of knowledge. And I want to leave you with one example, and this is Paul. At one point in time, as Paul was doing his ministry in Acts, I believe in Acts 19, I can't remember, but I believe it's Acts 19, as I'm coming to a close, he goes to this city that is called the city of Athens, city of intellectuals. This is where, philosophical thoughts were engaged at the time. And he started talking to them. But he had noticed that even though there was the pantheon of the Greek, the Greek gods, many of them, there was one particular one that they recognized, but they never gave a name. They called him their known God. And Paul, while thinking about the cultural, religious, customary ways of the Greeks at the time and the thoughts that were coming out of that, he respected all that. But at the same time said, you know, I know who you are. I've come to you to introduce you to the unknown God that you talk about. What a beautiful way of engagement. That Jesus, when he meets with people, he goes to their location. He meets them at that space and he spends time, considerable time. We have seen him spending considerable time with Nicodemus, a religious leader. And we'll also see him spending a lot of time with his family. And in getting to know them, in getting to engage them in cultural spaces, in those spaces that I'm talking about, he won many to him. But of course, there are others who will reject him, like in Jerusalem, he's going to be rejected by many. And definitely, even when you go out to minister, you face a lot of rejection. People will call you names. People will refuse even to engage with you. But at the same time, you know without a doubt that there are others within the communities that you engage in that we will definitely accept the calling of Christ. The beauty of our study today is that every scripture, every verse is very important. That if you spend some more time in engaging and probing words and things that are spoken in a verse, you can gain more knowledge. And we see that in these three verses, there's nothing a lot about, about faith. It's just Jesus' movement. But it speaks a lot on how Jesus approached others and the communities in his ministry. I hope this helps you, my friend, and I hope that you're learning something as we continue engaging each other in seeking wisdom in order to gain understanding. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And hopefully, that as you think about how you engage and how you approach ministry, that you also think about culture, you think about customs. And I know there are many questions that come with that. Because people have customs sometimes that are repelling. And that is a discussion of another day. But the point today is that recognizing the fact that people have their thoughts, people have their values, people have their customs, people have their cultures that we need to engage with if we are going to succeed in our calling and the ministry of Jesus Christ. So may the Lord bless you and may the Lord keep you. And until we see each other next time, shalom. And I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.